Okay, I've prayed about where to begin, and I thank you very much because thank you. Um, it's hard. I've weighed, how much detail do I give versus keeping some things private, because it doesn't just affect me; it affects my family, and that's the hardest part. Um, Also, you don't really want everybody to know your business, and but I've come to the place that I've decided it's important to give detail because I think it helps us see people differently. That you don't necessarily know who you're sitting with in church. You don't necessarily know who you're meeting on the street and what they have faced in their life. And um, we all have the thing that we say we would never do. We all have the thing that we say, I don't struggle with that. And we put that sin out there to say, that's so wrong and that is so bad. We never say that about the sin that we struggle, our personal struggle. So I think it's important to know that um, the build up to these things, because it's not as black and white as we like to make it a lot of times. There's so much more behind the decision. Um, so, with that said, I have really prayed about saying only what God wants me to say, but everything He wants me to say. And the revelation has been so huge, and there's been so many parts of it that I hope I communicate it properly and I don't miss anything. That's the big weight. So, that said, my father left when I was 2. My mom had 5 children. We struggled. Life was very rough. My mother remarried when I was 12, a very abusive alcoholic. Life was rougher. I struggled a lot as a girl in that household to find my spot, to not having a father, going from not having a father to having a father who was not good. And I looked for love anywhere love would look at me. um, my sophomore year of high school, I met a boy and I fell in love, like head over heels. I can stand here at 33 years old and tell you I really did love him. Most people say I thought I loved that person. I didn't know what love was. I loved him. Within a week of my 16th birthday, I found I was pregnant. You can imagine. It was bad. My parents were upset. His parents were about a million times more upset. I began to hear it from all sides. His mother forbid him to talk to me. We literally, until about 2 years ago, had never spoken since the days she was told I was pregnant. So not only am I 16, pregnant, very alone, but I have now been cut off from someone that I really believed I loved, and it's almost as though it really felt like a death. His mother immediately would call me daily, wanting me to give the baby up for adoption. I did not feel I was strong enough to do that. There was just nothing in me that told me I could do that. I knew that if I got to the point of delivering that baby had to come home with me, that I didn't want to hurt someone by picking a family and pulling a child from them. Our priest, I was Catholic, convinced my mother to send me to a home for pregnant teens, 6 hours from where we lived, from my town. It's the kind of place that they send you and they forget about you until you come home and miraculously your baby's gone and now you're supposed to pick up and be perfectly fine, right? That was a terrifying realization that she was going to make me do this. It was horrible. My oldest sister was away at college. She was 20-something and a very liberal, northern, excellent school and a PhD program. And her faculty advisor approached her and knew the situation, what was happening with me, and told her that she had had an abortion as a young teenager. Well, I think she was maybe 18. She was older than I was. And her life was perfect. She she went in, she had this abortion. Everything was fixed. Instantly, we're better. And she went on to earn multiple degrees, marry a man that loved her, and her life was all hunky-dory, right? Originally, when I was approached with that from my sister, I absolutely told her there was no way. I could not do that. Could not. I wanted to keep my baby. As the weeks went on and things got worse and worse, the situation with the baby's father's family became incredibly volatile. His mother told me that if we didn't give the baby up for adoption, they were going to take the baby from me. And I really truthfully believe that. I still believe that to this day. And my mom would not have helped me fight for that child either, so it would have happened. I couldn't reach out to him because at this point to the point of restraining orders, we're not allowed to speak. I had a revelation, like one day in my bedroom literally I had been 16 for maybe 3 weeks. And I saw myself in the mirror and I realized I'm standing in a room with a bed covered in stuffed animals and posters of boy bands on the wall. And I share this room with my younger sister. And there were 8 of us in a single wide trailer. And there was just no way I could bring a baby here. I said out loud to myself in that mirror, "You're a child." And I called my sister and I said, "Let's do this." I had to wait several weeks before she could come to me, before she had some time off to come pick me up and fly down, take me to the clinic, which was here in Houston, because they don't allow those things in Louisiana. I remember that day like it happened this morning. I hope one day it fades a little bit. I've always been told that there are places in this world God doesn't go. I don't know why people say that, but that there are, strip clubs and the really terrible places that terrible things happen, that God has to withdraw his spirit from those places and he's not there. And that felt like that place. All around me, there's a waiting room full of people, half of them crying hysterically. There's just so much pain. I think that as Christians, we're tempted to look at abortion clinics and people who have abortions and say, what a horrible place, what a horrible people. The people sitting in there are the people that feel like they have no other option. I was brought into an operating room. I was given an ultrasound right there in the operating room, but the screen was turned from me. And they gave me a sedative. And the next thing I know, I woke up in a very large recovery room, just bed after bed after bed. And I was hysterical. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I screamed repeatedly that I changed my mind. I can't describe to you what it's like to wish you could go back 30 minutes. Like every part of your being wishing you could undo the last half hour. I threw up violently. I could not be consoled. I think they ended up probably knocking me out again. By the time they were ready to let me go home, I was so sick that for the 2.5 hour drive back to my town, we had to pull over. I couldn't even count the number of times we would have had to pull over for me to vomit. It was like that for days. Crying until I would literally pass out. Vomiting, couldn't keep anything down, I couldn't do anything. I instantly learned at barely 16 the meaning of so many things, so many words that I think that a lot of us, take a lifetime to learn what it's like to grieve like that, to have the weight of the world on your shoulders and shame, fear, and just regret. Regret like nobody can even imagine. Things were bad for a couple years. I became very self-destructive. I didn't believe that I deserved to live. I didn't believe that I deserved anything that this world could have for me because I was such a horrible person that I needed to suffer. And I suffered at my own hands for a long time. I met Brandon shortly after turning 19, 3 years later. I immediately told him what I had told everyone. Even when I returned home, I told my mother that when they did the ultrasound in the operating room before the procedure, that the baby had no heartbeat, and I was going to miscarry anyway, so it was fine. Everything was good. I really don't know that. I told her that because I didn't want them to. It's so crazy now because I think I cared that much about everyone else's feelings. That the people that landed me there, I wanted to protect them. So I told Brandon the same story. I told him I had gotten pregnant at 16 and lost the baby, and I wanted him to know that. About a week before our wedding, he came to me and said, "You're going to tell me the truth." And I was like, what do you mean? And I had never told anyone the truth. And he was like, "You're going to tell me the truth now, or we don't walk down that aisle next week. I know what you did, and you're going to say it." So a whole lot of tears were shed, a lot. He held my hands, and he made me say out loud for the first time ever, "I am forgiven." And we said it together probably 50 times, over and over. "I am forgiven, I am forgiven, I am forgiven." And I clung to that for a long time. But I really felt like that was all there was for me, that I was forgiven, but God was seriously still ticked at me. Like, it's just not, forgiveness was all he could muster, right? Like, it's so horrible. I should just be thankful for the forgiveness because really how could I ask him for anything more than that? That would just be rude. So I struggled with that for a long time. And it felt like if I made it to heaven, kind of like Neshoba said, I would get there by the skin of my teeth, man. And it was probably going to be a game time decision, like, did you punish yourself enough? Did you beat yourself up enough over this? Or are we gonna be okay? And I did that. Even to the point that when I was pregnant with Aubrey, the entire pregnancy, I thought for sure God would take that baby from me, and I would deserve it. So, a couple months ago, we had Adam and Julie over for dinner. And we were just talking, and Julie began speaking to me, and she said, "You are loved. You are God's princess, and he wants you to know that. He loves you, and he doesn't understand why you can't accept it, but he wants you to." And she said, "I don't know what's going on with you, but this is the message for you. And I knew exactly what she was talking about, but I just cried. And I didn't say a word. But I spent weeks thinking about that. Like, yeah, he loves me, but he's still like, I mean, you can love someone and be like, dude, you messed up, and I am still pretty upset with you. So, a few weeks ago, the praise and worship set was just, I mean, one song about love after the other. I mean, it just like poured on. And about halfway through, I'm telling you, as clear as I'm standing here today, I heard God. And for 17 years, that baby would be 17 years old next month. For 17 years, I have had this vision that God left me. That he said, you enter that door, and I cannot go with you. And I was alone, completely alone. And he very clearly said to me, you are wrong. You have been wrong. You have been wrong for 17 years. I never left. I was there with you. I saw every bit of it. I know every single detail that went into that decision. I know why you made it. And yes, I wept, but I did not weep because I was upset with you. I wept because I hurt for you. And I got that picture that as a parent, not only did he know all the pain I was feeling to that moment, he knew the pain I was going to feel after. He knew how long I was going to beat myself up and what that must have been like for a father to watch and not be able to. I can't imagine. I just can't even imagine as a parent watching your child endure something like that and can't get them off the collision course. And I was just so overwhelmed. I mean, I can't even describe what it's like to not only realize you've been wrong for 17 years, but that you were so wrong about something that has affected you so deeply. And just that picture over and over again that he only didn't want me to hurt. So yesterday I felt like it was really necessary to, I just sent a message to my siblings and let them know what I was going to speak on today, because I knew it was going to be videoed and make it out there, and I just didn't want them to be caught off guard by it. And my brother, we're very close. He's 2 years younger than me, and I just love him. He sent me a message, and he said, if I, and all of my flaws, can empathize with you, Heather, how much more so can God? Are you kidding? That was like my first thing was, how many times in my life have I heard the attributes of God listed, and empathy has never been on that list. Never. Here we go again. I've never stopped to think that God thought of me that way, that he just would look at me and he would have taken it from me in an instant. So, then this morning we're singing, I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way you love us. And that line has gotten me every time. I mean, if you've sat near me in church ever, you know I sob like praise and worship the entire time. Um, and that line always gets me because I think, whoa, how nice. Man, that would be awesome. Like, if I could just meditate on God's love, the regret would vanish. I've never been able to muster that because literally for 17 years daily, I have wanted to go back in time. This morning, it felt real. It felt like, you know what? You're so good. And you love me. You love me more than I could ever begin to comprehend. You're not mad at me. Not only are you not mad at me, you got down there with me and sobbed with me, and you wanted to hold me, and you have wanted to comfort me for 17 years while I walked away. And that's pretty huge. So I took a risk by coming up here and saying what I've said. I don't feel like I've taken a risk with you guys because y'all are just awesome. But the videoing was a huge risk because I don't know who will see this. I don't know who will see this that knew me when I was 16 years old. And I hope God speaks through it, not only in this house, but very far-reaching. And in coming to peace with being able to say this in front of you and say this to whoever sees it, I have just really clinged to the verse that there's no condemnation. And man, you know what? If condemnation comes, it's not of God. It's not. And so that's okay. And I'm good. So thank y'all, and I hope it helps somebody. Oh, and sorry, that was one more thing. I have really believed for a long time that I was supposed to share this message, but I felt like I was supposed to share it, especially for teenagers or, people who would fall in that trap that it can't happen to you, and maybe change someone's path as far as being in that position. And yesterday when I was praying, I realized that that's not the message, that the message has always been for people who are hurting, the people who have already done it, and being real and open and saying, you know what? Not only can you be forgiven, but you can be loved. That's so much bigger because we're all going to mess up. And there's no rank to sin in God's eyes. There is in man's eyes, but there's not in God's eyes. And we're all going to do something. But you can be forgiven and loved.
Awesome.